What's going on, everyone? Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment and let you guys know that there are some sensitive topics that we discussed today in this episode. If you're sensitive to the topics of sexual assault or drug overdose, you might want to view this at your own discretion. Thanks, guys, and we hope you enjoy the episode with Sun. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sitting In Podcast. This is a conversation with athletes about real life. Today, we are sitting down with Sun Greene. Sun is a founder of Coastal Run Club. He's a real estate agent, got a lot of other irons in the fire. Sun, how would you introduce yourself to the people of YouTube, Spotify, and everything else?
Should I look at camera one?
Yeah, you can do that. You can look at us. Look at us.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can talk to us.
So I'd say I'm a community leader. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a connector, and I'm just a really big people person. One thing I have recently more or less found out is I come off extremely extroverted, and I am, but I feel like I'm really introverted too. I need my own time. I need my own space, recharge, and then get back out there. I ride bikes. I do tries, and yeah.
I didn't even know you rode bikes and did tries. I thought you were just a runner.
Oh, no. I really just do a little bit of everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I always loved sports. I grew up kind of like the chubby kid, and so it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I swam. I played water polo growing up.
Okay.
So I always had some type of a base, and over time, college, all I did was lift. I was actually like a music major, went into kinesiology afterwards. All I cared about was moving weights and Olympic lifting and things like that. Yeah, I think I've seen your Instagram before, hitting some front squats. I'm like, let's go.
Definitely not me.
Okay. Not you. Okay.
Max and front squats.
Okay, I don't know.
Because front squat like 60 pounds.
Okay, just kidding.
Probably Chris.
Yeah, maybe.
It was another super yadded guy.
Probably Chris, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, it kind of just led into endurance sports, which has really been like a huge passion of my life in the past decade or so.
Were your parents or like anybody in your family athletic folks, or were they just kind of like?
Kind of, yeah. So my mom started riding bikes when I was in middle school, and I thought it was super not cool.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you're wearing tights and riding bike? Like, this is lame. And then later on, one of her boyfriend, who's now her fiance, I got his bike as a hand-me-down and kind of started with, the old Merida aluminum, super European thing, because he's straight from Austria. And yeah, that kind of just slowly took off, did my first try, and just doing a bunch of things now.
So you said you swam originally?
Yeah.
Right on. How old were you when you started swimming and doing water polo?
So polo was pretty quick for me, but I started swimming when I was probably 6 or 7. My family was very much so throw you into the pool and sink or swim.
Good luck.
Yeah, my uncle, he's like a diver of some sort, and my cousins were always competitive swimmers. So we always had a little bit of that. And so I swam competitively all through high school. I was thinking about doing it in college, but decided not to. I pursued music, which is like a whole nother life too. Mm-hmm. And water polo had a quick stint because the coach, I was always kind of a big kid. I don't know, I'm like 6'2" right now. I was probably 6 foot tall when I was a freshman.
Wow.
Yeah, and probably like 180, something like that. And my coach wanted me to practice with varsity, so I did. His son was on varsity too, and they used to just like wallop on me, like all the older guys. They'd like beat me up. I'm just the freshman. And one thing that led to another is he was like, defend yourself. And I was like, okay. And so I did, and apparently his son was guarding me. I did something, and I tweaked his arm and more or less like retired him out of water polo. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the coach hated me and never played me, and I was like, all right, looks like I'm not playing water polo anymore. So I only got a couple years in.
Isn't it crazy how like the politics in sports can so quickly happen that way, especially when there's like a little bit of nepotism involved?
For sure.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's wild that like you could have been insanely talented too, right? And gone so far in water polo, and you just never know because some coach was pissed after he told you to defend yourself.
Yeah, and that's just like the nature of the sport. I guess maybe I went too hard, but like that's what water polo is. Yeah.
Water polo is a contact sport, man. Everybody's like kicking each other underneath the water, all that stuff. Leave their toenails long so they can cut each other up, right?
Yeah. Well, refs actually make you file your nails down. So like before a game, they'll check, and so like you show them your nails. And if they're too long, which might make it worse, but like you file it on concrete just on the side of the pool, and then you show them again.
File them
I don't want any part of any sport that you have to get your nails checked. That is
Yeah.
I want none of that.
Right.
So where are you from originally then? Are you from SoCal?
I'm from Orange County.
Orange County.
shit.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yep. So I grew up first in Lake Forest and then moved to Irvine later on. But yeah, so I was kind of sharing with Max a little bit. I'm first generation. So I'm half black, half Chinese. I look super Polynesian, Hawaiian.
I would have guessed you were
something.
Yeah. I had a lot of Samoan friends growing up.
Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Taft. Just outside of Bakersfield.
Okay.
For some reason, there's a massive population of Samoan dudes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they love it.
Same with like Utah and like different.
It's so random, man. Like,
Yeah, there's just like one place and everybody kind of congregates.
Yeah. So you said Chinese and...
I'm Chinese and black.
Okay.
African American. So I grew up culturally just very Chinese though. So just with my mom. My mom was one of 10 kids. She's smack in the middle, number 6. So the first home, like what I know as my childhood home, was a multi-generational thing. My mom and I shared a room until I was like 7 or 8. And then we moved to Irvine. And then that's where it was just us two for a little bit. And then she got remarried. And it was like, she was just not picking good guys. So yeah, originally from SoCal, that's kind of what I'm getting to. Originally from SoCal, but all right there in Orange County.
So growing up in a multi-generational household.
Yeah.
I have zero experience with that.
Sure.
You don't have any experience with that.
I don't have
right?
any experience with that
What
either.
does that look like? Tell us more. If you're
Yeah. It's chaotic.
okay.
Yeah. So in our house, we had probably 4 or 5 families at one time. Lake Forest, houses are a little bit bigger-ish, but my mom was born in Vietnam. My family left Vietnam during the war, went to Taiwan. Taiwan then came to the States. And so that was the place where everybody ended up. One of the reasons why I think is because in Westminster, Garden Grove is the biggest population of Vietnamese people outside of Vietnam. So it was close-ish where people still felt welcomed. Like my family felt like they were close enough to their people, even though we're Chinese. But they all like speak Vietnamese too.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so, sorry, I totally just blinked for a second there.
No, you're good. We're on the multi-generational household and what that was like for you growing up.
Yeah. So cousins, even though I was an only child, I had a lot of cousins that were around me all the time. So I always felt like I had siblings. There's an old group of cousins, the middle group of cousins, which I'm the youngest of, and then there's like young cousins.
So you're an only child otherwise.
Only child otherwise.
Okay.
So then once we moved to Irvine, that's where I was left to my own devices, and it was kind of like a weird time too.
How did you adapt to the change going from, multi-generational household and having so many people around all the time to probably like almost peace and quiet in a way?
Yeah.
You had your own place and, no siblings. Or are you only child, you said?
Only child,
so,
yep.
So going from all your cousins around you all the time and having all these people around to sort of, being left to your own devices, how'd you adjust to that as a kid? At 7, 8 years old, that's got to be a huge change.
Yeah, so I feel like I unfortunately didn't adjust well. Once we moved to Irvine, my mom met another guy. It's an ex-stepdad. And so she was pretty focused and busy spending time, energy there. And that's when I became a chubby kid. And all I did was watch cartoons, eat snacks. Like I could get away with anything. And that term latchkey kid? Like that's what I was. My grandma used to walk me to school, and I would just walk home. 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever, 8-year-old. I'm just walking to and from school every single day by myself. My mom's either working or she was with, her guy at the time. So for me, it was a really weird thing where I was just very out of body, functioning, just doing whatever, and didn't really have any guidance, which was really weird.
Some kids, I feel like, naturally would act up.
Yeah.
Did you ever act up outside of just, kind of holding up by yourself and just grubbing out?
Besides that, no. One of the reasons why is one of my older cousins who I'm really close with, he was the biggest troublemaker you could ever meet.
Okay.
And so I saw all the consequences and things like that. So I was always kind of a goody-goody kid to some extent. But because I was only child to a single mom, I got passed around a lot too. When she wasn't able to, somebody else would have to pick me up and I'd have to go here, I had to go there. And so when I was with this cousin who I lived with for years and years after we moved to Irvine, we would just get into a lot of shit. And because this guy, he's short Chinese dude, but he's like a bowling ball and not afraid of anybody.
Yeah.
They ended up moving out to Corona, like East Vale, which is dairy town and not a good place to raise kids.
Yeah.
Especially back in the day. And so even though I grew up in Irvine, I spent a lot of time out in East Vale, Corona, things like that. And I mean, I was the big little cousin. He'd make me fight his friends, you know, like he'd make me do like petty theft. Like he was starting to deal and do a bunch of things at a really young age too. And so I was just exposed to a lot pretty quickly.
I always think it's fortunate that like, you know, you definitely like got exposed to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And while, you know, being exposed to that stuff is always rough, being able to like come out of the other side of it like relatively scot-free is still like, at least, you know, I have a lot of friends who like were in that situation and it's like they're 14 years old and they've got like 4 misdemeanors, you know, and that stuff like weirdly just kind of followed them.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, they're like applying for a job at, you know, 18, 19 and they're like, oh, this kid has 4 misdemeanors.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's like they have like some like low grade felony where it's like, you know, being able to get out of that at least with nothing on like a permanent record. Right.
I was super fortunate because on paper, all the things that have happened to me as a kid and like my upbringing, I should be like delinquent. I should be that type of kid.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, my cousin was literally dealing in middle school and then he got into like hard stuff later on too, which we could talk about later, but it's kind of like a sad thing that's happened in the more recent amount of time, but also one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for doing a lot of things. Yeah. So definitely fortunate. And yeah.
How did you go from that life outlook, right, and being in this situation? So where you're at now, did that push you to be different and operate in a different way in sort of all aspects of life? What are the key takeaways, I guess, from, you know, that early childhood experience up to probably what sounds like 10, 15 years old, maybe?
Yeah, probably I'd say until college is where I really came to, and, you know, you wake up and you look at yourself in the mirror like, oh shit, that's me, you know?
Did you always want to go to college, or was that something that somebody instilled in you?
I always think I was going to go to school, especially with my mom. I'm first generation and she did end up going to school somehow, didn't speak English, put herself through school. And so it was like really important to her. She was a classic Tiger mom for quite a while. Like I play violin. I've played violin for 14 years. I'm classically trained. I play like double bass, viola. And I went to school initially as a music performance major, mostly to make her happy, right? And especially with it just being mom, it's like I want to make sure she's good. But I also realized I wanted to do something with my life. I think in high school, when I was starting to get down into like a bad track of just not being on top of anything, junior year comes around, or you're about to go in junior, I'm like, I should probably do something with my life. I had a 1.5 GPA probably by sophomore year, just because I just didn't give a shit. I didn't have guidance. My mom was like on her 3rd relationship, and I just was left to my own devices, seriously. And music was the only like thing I had that could bring me to somewhere else. So my junior, senior year, I really, really focused on music a lot more so to give myself opportunities, knowing I was going to drop it at some point, which is what I did.
Did you ever have anybody sweep you up and offer you any guidance, or how did you independently navigate these things and have that come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better term?
Yeah.
How'd you get there mentally? A lot of people wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
It takes some natural intelligence, I guess, or awareness, self-awareness.
I had a lot of times as a kid, I had a lot of survival mode things kick in. So again, being passed around, I always had to be on good behavior. Otherwise people don't take you in anymore. And then if I didn't, my mom would whoop my ass, you know? And so it ended up being this thing where I realized what's good and what's bad. But when it came to wanting to do more with my life, again, also seeing my cousin, his name's Brian. I have probably like 15 or 16 cousins, but Brian was the one who a lot of things he did wrong. I saw it. He was 2 years older. So it's just enough time for me to pivot and do something else.
How did you realize that was the incorrect thing to do? Was it the consequences that he was facing, or what did it take for you to catch on and understand that was not necessarily the right track for you as well. Because a lot of people, I feel like personally, you would see somebody and emulate a lot of their behaviors naturally. But it sounds like instead you deviated from those behaviors.
Yeah. So Brian was probably at face value, he's like a really good guy, and he is. Especially if he's on your side, he's a really good guy. But the second somebody's on his bad side, you might as well be like dead to him. It's like this crazy. He had one of those personalities that was just so strong, and when he felt one way or another, and so he used to get in a lot of fights. Like I said, he'd make me fight his friends for fun, and then later on something had happened and he got caught for some pretty harsh stuff, and it was either going to go to juvie or get sent to like a boys' school in Texas. And so that's what happened to him. He got sent to Texas, and again, he's like this 5'4", 5'5" Chinese dude who's like pretty buff for, a high school kid.
Yeah.
You don't see it too often, especially back in the day. And he just came back different. I think it really messed with him when he got sent away, because he never really had guidance either. And I saw how sad he was, and just realized I didn't want that for myself, even though I was definitely on that track too.
I always think it's really fortunate when people have an avenue for which they can kind of, for lack of a better word, like escape like a suboptimal situation. You like found music and you were like, hey, like I'm not where I want to be, but this is something like, this is a pony I can like hook myself to that will at least get me further down the line in a better place.
Yeah.
At what point though did you realize that music was not something that you wanted to hold on to forever?
I think based off the circumstances, I could have stuck with it. But so I went to Chapman. It's a small little private school.
I went to Chapman.
Did you?
Yeah.
What year did you graduate?
2020.
You graduated 2020?
Yeah.
I graduated 2016.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was
Well, I was only there 2018, 2019, 2020.
Okay. My girlfriend graduated 2019.
Oh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. I was not on that side of campus.
The SoCal bubble.
I was in the Schmidt College of Engineering.
Okay. Nice.
So
yeah. So I started as a music performance. So like we were only in one little corner for my freshman year, and I did a full year, balls to the wall. I'm going to be a musician.
What's the outlet or path for somebody who's going to do the classically trained musician route?
Yeah.
Like
Either
orchestra? Yeah,
either professional orchestra, so like orchestral things, studio music, which is kind of what I thought I'd get into, tracks, different things like that. Just go live in LA and do studio music. And I think that's what it was, is I kind of realized that I was pretty limited to a couple of different things. And I also, orchestra kids are sometimes kind of weird. And I was one, right? Like I did honor orchestra. I had the talent, and as a kid, I didn't put in the work until it was like really late on. And so Chapman was a conservatory, so they were extra intense, which means some of the people there are extra unique. And I just didn't get along with anybody there, which was so bizarre, because my upbringing growing up in Irvine, it's pretty diverse, or, at least a lot of Asian people. That's half my people too, so I get along with it. But at Chapman, it felt very different.
Chapman is also notably less diverse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If anything, the music program probably is more diverse than others. But at the same time, the conductor, the director, he had something out for me. He didn't like me. I did talk a little too much, during rehearsals and things like that. But I was the only kid out of all the orchestra that got a B my first year. And it was almost intentional. And he always made, what's the word? Like, I was the one who he made an
example of, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, don't be like him. I'm like, I'm just,
fuck me, I guess.
like, I love playing music, and you're just, yeah, it wasn't a good.
You seem personable too. So to go into a situation in which you didn't get along with a bunch of people, or you didn't really jive with them.
Yeah.
Was that tough?
That was tough, especially because, as a music major, I was taking 18 units, 21 units, because you could take extra for free. I went to Chapman because they gave me financial aid. Like,
same. Yeah.
Don't come from money. It's like they helped him out. They helped me out. So I really wanted to give it a go, and it just didn't pan out the way that I was hoping. All my friends were doing cool things, and all the things were happening while I was stuck in quartet rehearsals on a Friday night and all these things. And I was like, I guess I'm going to switch out of this eventually too.
There wasn't much college experience associated with it when you were in the music department, right?
Not in that sense. I didn't really have homework though. And even though I was supposed to be practicing, I just sometimes didn't.
Obviously super dedicated to the craft.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then you did like a full 180 though, didn't you?
Yeah.
You went from the music program to the
kines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
kinesiology.
opposite side of campus. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully it wasn't too far so we went to Greene, which is relatively close.
What is that?
It's Greene is just like the building.
Oh, okay.
We're an in-group here.
Sorry about that.
Well, me and 1,000 other people on the internet.
Panthers here talking.
Oh, wow.
Because they're
Panthers.
D3, and so my buddies are all in football and stuff, but we went to football games, and whenever they scored, it's like this, like the most hilarious sound you could ever imagine.
It was also like, you'd be like, we weren't exactly a football powerhouse.
No.
Oh, what do you mean?
No.
We got like a 5'8" lineman weighing like $180. You're like, dude, let's get some big boys down there.
D3 Orange County, small liberal school.
Yeah, it's not.
So I always loved, athletics, sports, the human body. Because I was always a bigger kid, I always loved lifting. I went to the gym, found the gym at a pretty early age. So I think that was maybe something that I always had keeping me on track and being accountable. And I hurt myself one time doing CrossFit when I was in high school. My mom picked up CrossFit randomly, and here I am, 6 foot, $180, sophomore or junior in high school. And the CrossFit coach, he's like, "Oh, do front squats." And I'm like, "Okay." I do one, probably just looked horrible. He's like, "Oh, that was great." Puts on more weight. I remember he put 185 on the bar, and first time I've ever front squatted.
It's a big front squat.
First time I ever front squatted, I go down to the bottom of the squat and I hear a pop in my knee.
Yeah.
I push through, there's adrenaline, but then for the next year and a half, I could barely sit down properly without my knee hurting. And so never got an MRI, never got it checked out, and decided to get a degree to hopefully self-prescribe and diagnose myself. And that's why I went to kinesiology.
Did it work? Did you figure out what happened?
I strengthened everything else around it. And if anything, it just gave me a really holistic approach about the body and saying like, it's not just one thing. Sometimes it can be, but for me, I worked at it at a lot of different angles.
There are so many examples of like high school or like just young, like in your earlier years, coaches prescribing you lifts and things like that, having you do a 1 rep max for what, dude?
Right.
It's so crazy that exists. And like kind of in our like school systems and athletic PE, it's like, oh, deadlift. We're not going to show you how to do it. Honestly, we don't really know how to do it, but we're going to have you throw 400 pounds on the bar and try and yank that thing. It's like, dude, what are you doing? I don't understand. So did your kinesiology, so when did you go from self-proclaimed chubby kid to fit lifting weights? Was that like a arc of time, or were you just
I mean, I still got a little to love. Like, let's be real. I don't fit the runner stereotype. I'm not, the pure cyclist stereotype either. I feel like what I look like now is really a culmination of just always doing a lot of things. So I guess I have that inner child still in my head of I know what that kid looked like, and that's how I feel from time to time. But now just because I have more consciousness and feel a little bit more confident about myself in ways that I'm not that, but there's still parts of it there.
I think that one of the things that I really appreciate about people who are like kinesiology people, or even like people who are like more on like the human physio side, is that the more people I talk to, the more that they are like systems people. And I think that like the way that people view like body systems, where it's like, oh, well, like, your knee hurts, like, let's look at it as like a system. Yeah. That like same system thinking trickles into their life in a weird way.
Yeah.
Where, I don't know, I have a buddy named Matt Fahey. He's in the physio department at SDSU. Cool. And he's like the same thing where, you'll be like talking to him about a problem you're having, and he's like, well, what about this other thing that's
what about your ankle? It's
yeah. And it's like both body, but it's also just like, you'll be talking about a life thing that's going on.
Yeah.
And, he'll ask you a question about like something that's like related, but not directly. And that style of thinking has always impressed me, where he's like, oh, like you're having like relationship problems, but like, do you feel like you're communicating well with yourself? I'm like, yo, don't ask me that shit, man.
He's done the work.
Yeah, he's like 100% done the work.
Do you feel like you're a systems person then?
Are you? Yeah.
I'm not.
No.
Yeah. I swing. I just go for it. But at the same time, it's funny because I was listening to another one in the pods, and I'm definitely somebody who tries out a lot of different things. But again, having the kine side of it, I do enjoy science-based evidence research, things that are done. And I don't just subscribe just because there's a doctor or there's like, whatever else. I want to know how they do everything so I can really pick and choose what I like from this or that too. So not quite a system, but once I do, I'm actually on a marathon training program right now.
Oh, no shit.
And I accidentally hurt myself because I continue to lift too heavy while still following this program, and I'm bringing volume and intensity up, and I'm not a light guy, I'm like 210 on a bad day, like 205 on a good day. Like I fluctuate a lot, and I still like to lift heavy because that has always been important to me for whatever reason. So I'm learning. I'm getting the systems down more and more, and I do like and enjoy the progress and just like the tangible progress of working really diligently at one thing too.
I feel like one of the things that you were talking about before, though, is that you're like a guy who has a lot of pokers in the fire, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not just, I feel like this marathon where you're like getting a little bit more focused is not something that is super, I feel like the picture that I got is that like, you're like, well, I'm riding a bunch, I'm lifting a bunch. Do you still swim? Like
occasionally.
Yeah. But like you do triathlons, like.
Yeah.
But marathon only is atypical for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not just a runner. And it's funny, even with like the run club, right? Like that all started because of a void. Nice segue.
Yeah.
I was training for a 50K.
Club, huh? Yeah.
I was training for a 50K because one of my buddies.
50K run.
Yeah. Ooh. Which, in the ultra world, a 50K is like, it's like a 5K, right? Like people are like, whatever. But I was training for a 50K and it was literally just running with friends. And I didn't really, it was during COVID. There wasn't a lot of people that were around. Finally started meeting people from bikes actually. Mm-hmm. And then started running with people from bikes. And then from there, it kind of just transpired. I always wanted like a creative outlet, and then the run club kind of started. But it was never, I'm full on only a trail runner. I'm only going to be running for, forever. But I really enjoy doing it. And I like lifting so I can run, and running so I can lift, and surfing with my girlfriend because all she does is surf. And now she runs sometimes too. So it's kind of a cool little thing that transpired.
How did you get talked into a 50K?
I have a buddy who is like my Sherpa. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who helped guide me through my first, half Ironman. I've done a bunch of half Ironmans, never a full yet. It's not that appealing to me.
Me neither.
Yeah, no. And so he's always been in that endurance world too. We went to Chapman together also. And I don't know. It was always just cool seeing things that he did. He's also like a strong guy, not that pretty atypical for an endurance athlete. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, cool, Josh is a strong dude. He looks really fit, and he's pushing the boundaries of what I thought, was a normal endurance athlete. And so found trail running. It was always just really fun to get out there and get lost. And eventually you come find yourself like a few hours later, you're like, oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. And through running, everybody has like their own personal relationship. Same with cycling. You figure out like how good you feel after, or maybe it's the tangible progress that you like, or whatever it is. But that's really just how the run club started over time too.
So what is it? You started Coastal Run Club? Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
It's like, it's really not that much of a thing, but yeah.
I feel like I'm not
Sure.
super plugged into the running stuff.
Cool.
I feel like we're in a run club boom right now.
Yeah.
It's like the hot thing to do.
It kind of irks me because like Coastal Run Club isn't like the, hey, let's come here, find a bunch of chicks and like hook up,
Dude, I've been seeing so much like
I hate that stuff.
social media content.
Because I don't push any of that whatsoever.
Good.
Matter of fact, it's like if influencers come or whatever, I mean, my thing is I like to highlight everybody who's there. It's you'll hardly ever see my face on it super intentionally. It's not about me. It's really just about people showing up for themselves with friends, whatever. And Encinitas, North County is like a really small town. Out here, I feel like it's a little bit more dense. There's a lot more people, but still, like PB Run Club is freaking massive.
Yeah,
There's like
huge.
1,000 people show up to it.
Yeah.
I got caught. I was riding once, and the like group of people came by, and I felt like in the Midwest when like a train goes by the road.
Yeah.
I was like, it's
still going.
It's still going, and they like had people like shut down the intersection.
That's crazy.
And I swear, like 1,000 people ran by.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell?
We're not quite that big, but it's enough, especially where we are, because there's not that many people in Cardiff Encinitas area. So we have a mob of about like 100 people or so, which is a lot of people, and that's not what I anticipated when I started a run club. Yeah.
How has that changed your relationship with running? Just now you have sort of maybe a sideways obligation to this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I put in a lot of time into it, and it's not like for profit or anything. Sometimes we have merch and make like chump change, but at the end of the day, it's the feedback from people that really hypes me up. Like I said, I'm a really big person on connecting. Like I love connecting people with different things. And if I know that you're from Taft and I know somebody else who's from Bakersfield, like chances are like I like get off on that. I don't know why. It's so cool because I know what it's like to be pretty confined and solitary, again, from my childhood, things like that. So I love when I meet somebody else who has similar backgrounds or upbringings, and I can really connect. I really connect with Blasian people, right? Like Black Asian people or mixed kids in general, just because it's somebody who has a little bit of the same experiences in life.
Yeah, and it's a pretty unique experience too.
Yeah. And so just bringing people together is like a really cool thing. But yeah, it's so funny seeing all the memes. Like there's like the 6'5" blue eyes finance, and now there's that for Run Club and things. I don't know. People send me stuff all the time, and I'm like, okay, it's funny, but that's not what I'm trying to push here.
Yeah. I've seen people being like deleting Tinder, going to the local Run Club.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people are jumping on that, and now so people are coming here with that expectation, and I'm like, nah.
There's goods and bads.
Yeah.
And it's good to have more people at Run Club. Bad to have everybody hitting on each other all the time.
Totally.
I mean, I guess community involved.
To some extent, it's going to happen.
Of course.
And it has. I remember the first relationship that happened at Run Club before like Run Clubs really exploded, right? Like we started end of 21, beginning of 22. And, now every city you go to probably has like 5 or 6 Run Clubs. Like there is probably one other one. But when the first relationship happened, I was like, let's freaking go. Being a connector. And like that hyped me up so much. I was like, these two different people from different walks of life. And this was the common denominator that brought them together. And like this thing happened.
Are they still together?
They are not.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask about.
I was like, Run Club wedding?
Yeah, they're not. But I know there's, and now through the grapevine, I hear of like all the random hookups and whatever. I'm like, it's happening. I've been in a long-term relationship, so I have no idea what that's like. Yeah. But I'm like, cool, good for you guys. I'm happy you're
Everybody
getting
has their
something out
own
of it.
relationship with Run Clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How did the breakup influence Run Club? Was there chaos, or was it unnoticed?
No, it was okay. Yeah, they were both like really low key and just like nice people anyways. Like one of the girls ended up, I feel like she's following her passion with running even more, and she ended up moving out to Salt Lake. And so now she's trail running her face off, which is really cool to see.
That's rad.
And then the guy in the relationship, he's all in on endurance sports and different things now. He's already a waterman. He's like an amazing sailor, sailed in college, all these things, but now he's biking a bunch, running a bunch, swimming. So
I think it's so fulfilling seeing, because from our shop, we do like rides, we do like organized stuff. And it is so cool to watch people grow. Yeah. Like, there are people that I see like every week on our Sunday group ride who we've been doing it now for almost a year and a half now. Like watching people grow through that is so fulfilling.
So I had a part of that too, where, giving credit where credit's due, Team Best, the bike crew up in Cardiff, I was day one, I was there with all those guys. We were all, there's a mixed bag of experience, and a lot of novice people, a lot of people intermediate. And then you had some people who had been doing crits. I'd never heard of a crit before that, and it was just a really cool thing because everybody got really fit together. It was COVID. I know we were supposed to be social distancing, but we all were riding together, 3-4 times a week. And we just got for our level, relative to our level, we got really fit, and it was cool to see that and do it together. And so that's been a big thing, at least with Run Club too. It's, you see so many people who they latch onto it. Oh, now they see the progress and they're like, oh, this dude's ripped now. Like, he came here and he was like not in good shape before. And so it kind of just like rubs off and inspires different people in different ways.
I think it's also awesome that running has this accessibility factor to it.
Yeah.
Where people are like, I'm going to go buy my pair of shoes. And I think that the difference between Run Club and like group riding, and one of the things that I think is so cool about Best is the approachability of Best. But I think that Run Club is like one of these, it's a great gateway to like endurance athletics, where people are like, well, it's like, you know,
can take it as seriously as you would like to take
absolutely.
it.
Some people view it as like, you know, basically an avenue to meet people. And then some people are like, oh, I go to Run Club, and like that is their launching point to go run a 50K.
Totally. And that's why I like it so much. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to ask about, you know, do you think that the social aspect of a sport is contributing to a healthier population overall?
I'd say so.
Because Run Club, we talk about, you know, we're joking about like kind of the memes surrounding Run Club right now and the way that everybody's behaving and things. But realistically, at the end of the day, they're still getting out there and they're running.
Yeah.
And with the way that fitness in the U.S. is regarded by a large majority of the population, arguably, right? It's good to see people getting involved in some capacity. Do you think that you've seen a lot of that through the Run Club? People that maybe otherwise wouldn't be involved in any sort of athletics show up and then find something they can latch onto, and part of that comes from the social aspect of it? Yeah,
big time. I think the social is what gets people out there, or at least that's what they want and they're seeking. And once they do get there, if their cup is filled on the social side and then they see the benefits on the physical side, I know for me, I have to work out before I do work. Because I feel a lot, when I feel good and I'm taking care of myself, then I can take care of like other people too. And even in my relationship, it's like very much so the same thing. Like, we both do our own thing before we like do our thing together too. And so with Run Club, it's really cool because you'll have that exact thing. People move from out of town, they come here, they just want to meet somebody. And next thing you know, they're signed up for a half marathon or a marathon, and they're going for runs and meeting other people too. And we've had a lot of people who came in as the casual, and then now they're starting a bike, and there's like little mini bike groups starting within that. And I'm like, that is so sweet. And they're calling themselves like a mini Peloton and whatever. And I'm like, that's amazing, you know? Because I know I've been there too. And cycling is a pretty intimidating sport to get into.
Yeah.
Accessibility is huge, right? Like, bare minimum gear, unless you're riding some like dinky thing, it's like, even that, you're probably like $500 once you get shoes, helmets, whatever else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about like, well, how do we replicate Run Club in cycling? And it's the main barrier that we're always facing is like, well, with Run Club, it's like, well, shoes are like $150, and then it's some shorts and a t-shirt, and like you're out the door.
Yeah.
And I think that like part of the beauty of running is that it is so much more accessible. And so I think that is like one of the things that cycling has struggled with.
Yeah.
Is the like novice social enjoyment is there's just such a bigger buy-in to even like get into being a novice.
Yeah.
As opposed to running, where it's like, you know, it's pretty, anyone can get out there and do it.
Yeah. Running is it's like the biggest, you know, sport that's out there, casual sport, most people participating in a year, because it is that easy to get into it. And then also with cycling and bikes, it's, if you're a novice and then you go and you want to show up for a group ride with your friends, but they've been riding for even a year, like, you're going to get smoked, you know? Yeah. And the discrepancy of skill level and ability is just so wide, where like, I feel like I'm an average rider, but to a lot of my friends, I'm a really strong rider. But it's also because I know this world so deeply in different ways, where I'm like, no, dude, I am so average, and people would smoke me. Like, either of you two would absolutely destroy me.
It's funny because I have that same experience where I'm like, oh, I'm an average rider.
Me too.
Like, you know, no matter how good you are, like, there's always people who are slower than me. Yep. There's also always people who are faster than me.
Yeah.
And it just never ends.
And it's funny. So in bikes, when I really got into it, mostly during COVID, like everybody else, but my first try I did was 2018. So I was at least a handful of years ahead of the curve because everybody got into it, 2021-ish. It was really cool to see the Williams brothers come onto the scene because that's when I was like starting to get fit. I was like, cool, there's people of color getting into cycling now too. And I'm sure that's, maybe Dante has talked about it and other people have talked about it. But for me, I don't see Blasian people riding, but like that was like a close enough thing where I'm like, cool, these guys, like they have swag, they ride, they make it look really cool. And so that also inspired me in different ways too. But I also know just that whole world is so crazy and so deep when it comes to competitive cycling, both on the European Tour de France. Like I followed the tour and I have, Tade was an absolute animal. Like it was so cool to see all that stuff. Seeing Legion and all the other things and Butcher Box and because Adam and did you ride with Butcher Box too?
No.
Okay. And then I know you ride with Colin used to ride with you guys, right?
Yeah, Colin was on our team.
Yeah, like it's so cool to see all the different levels, and it's cool that like Colin's another person who he just like got into it, realized that he had a really good base, and then just like took off. And he's also massive, so like
he's like
it
6'5",
worked really well.
That dude's the best draft ever on the lead out train.
Gosh.
Yeah, he's so funny.
Myself, Coleman, another really tall kid, Colin. When we were riding with Team Best, like it was like the 6 foot plus guy. It was like all the big stallions coming through for the draft. It was like super fun.
I raced against Coleman a little bit too, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he was racing kind of during the Cat 3-4. We were always competitive in like the Cat 4 fields.
He was riding with like Carrere. I don't know how to actually say
just
it.
that North County like club team.
Yep.
What made you want to compete and test yourself and do a triathlon? Because you said you were swimming before you were playing water polo. You'd always been involved in sports, but I feel like a lot of people, once they hang it up. They might lift or run or whatever, and just for fun or the social aspect of it. But where did you find yourself feeling like you wanted to compete a little bit?
I think so. Endurance sports are usually pretty solitary in, that's just how they are. So it was always like a me versus me thing. I honestly, when I did my first half Ironman, I was still pretty chunky. I was probably like 215, 220. So heavier than I am now. And I was wearing like barefoot shoes, kind of, not toe shoes, but they might as well have been. It was in St. George, Utah, super hot, whatever.
That's a hard course too.
It was a super hard course.
That is not a chill course.
Yeah, that was my first try ever. It's like almost 3,000 feet of elevation on the bike. And then the run had like 1,200 feet of elevation in the sun, no shade. Anyways.
It's like famously one of the hardest courses in the US, I think.
And so I did that for my second try to beat myself.
Okay.
And it's that same thing. It's like, okay, I set the standard here. I want to beat it. And so I beat it by like 30 or 40 minutes. I was like, sweet. And so it's always kind of been just trying to beat myself in some ways. Obviously you have the random competitions within all the training. It's the cliche of trying to enjoy the journey too, because the race can come and go pretty quick. And even on race day, you have to hope for a perfect race for you to beat yourself, barring all the effort you put in prior.
So you got your degree in kinesiology, correct?
Yeah.
So then you completely scrapped it and you're now doing real estate.
Yeah, I did work in my field for a few years.
Okay.
I worked at a startup. It's called Functional Movement Systems, FMS. So the gym Equinox, they use it. It's FMS itself is a physical movement test. And so I would take you through 7 different movements, and it's a subjective test. And all we're trying to do is just identify pain, injuries, discrepancies left and right type thing. So one's like a deep squat with your heel elevated, arms overhead. I don't know if you've ever tried to do like an overhead squat. Like it's really tight.
I've always said that's the hardest movement in lifting.
Yeah.
Overhead squats are
it's like a snatch,
so hard.
right? Like
yeah.
Imagine trying to squat with weight in a snatch position. Like that's really difficult. And so we brought FMS to blue collar workers. And it was like this massively profound and like fulfilling job where Southern California Edison, like the power company, we tested 2,000 to 3,000 of their employees, the guys out in the field climbing up and down electrical poles. Like we would drive to their locations from Irvine where we were based. And we would test anywhere from 30 to 40 guys in one morning. We do educational modules. We teach them like what nutrition actually is. And then we test their movement. And based off of your ability, you're given a program that's all correctives and or like strengthening and things like that.
How did those guys respond to that stuff? So historically in my career, I've worked very closely with a lot of the blue collar side of the business.
Yeah.
Well, Dalton works at SDG&E.
I work at
also.
SDG&E.
There you go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of linemen,
Are you a lineman?
No, I am not. I'm a project manager engineer, but
Cool.
I've just worked with those folks
Yeah.
my whole career. And my career before that was in oil and gas.
There you go.
So I was always out with operators, construction managers,
Yep.
field personnel.
Yep.
And a lot of those blue collar dudes, in my experience, historically in the old days were resistant to that kind of thing. They're like, I don't need to stretch and warm up and do this and do that. And I think that the limited education that they were given on what that can do for their bodies and the way that they feel when they get home from working, it's like such a huge disconnect. And, you know, my dad was doing a lot of blue collar work for years and years growing up. And I remember sometimes too, like the dude comes home and even just working in the yard and whatever, and he's just exhausted. And even still to this day, like he'll go out and he like works his ass off. And when he comes in, he's just like toast, right?
Yeah.
But it's such a different thing than like actually performing some sort of, because you're working in awkward positions,
Yeah.
right? You're on your knees all day, like laying tile or whatever that looks like. Or for these guys climbing poles, they're in a set position all day. And these functional movements aren't integrated in their regular everyday routine. So when you guys are implementing that, what was the response that you received to your programs that you were offering these individuals? Was it received positively or was there resistance? What did that look like?
Yeah, there's definitely resistance. I think where it really started, so the CEO at the time, he was a battalion chief, so he worked in fire. He brought this to the fire department and he worked with all the academy guys. And he was able to at least identify the pain points for cadets in academy prior and get them better. And he's like, oh, we can bring this elsewhere. So when we brought it to the blue collar guys, first of all, they just all called us like stretch guys and whatever. I started working there the week after I graduated. And so not only are they resistant, but now I had glasses back then. I got LASIK, which changed my life. But I'd come in, they'd literally be like, oh, look, it's in 4 eyes, you know? And they tear you apart, dude. And it came down to the point where we really made a breakthrough with them when we were bringing them some research, yes, but this isn't me, this isn't Sun that is telling you should do this. Like, this is what is going on and this is what can happen if you don't take care of yourself. And so a lot of the different things, first they had to feel it, right? So they had to go through the test, and some people just go through it, don't really care. But then one of the biggest pivot point that happened, I was there for like 3.5 years. The biggest pivot point is there's this quote, it's what gets measured gets managed. We would do something called a dynamometer test, where it's like a grip strength test. The grip strength is a massive indicator for cardiovascular health. And so there's a research study done by Stanford, Harvard, something like that, where if you have a discrepancy of more than 20 pounds or 20%, don't quote me exactly on those numbers, it's something about 20. If it's left to right, the difference changes in a year. So if you pull right hand, it's like 120, left hand, it's 110. Okay, that's about normal. But then when you retest again, and if it's like, oh, 115 here and oh, you're 80, well, you're well beyond that point where something had happened. And so the indication is that you're this many percent more likely to be susceptible to heart attack, strokes, and like different things.
Oh, no way.
And so besides just the physical testing that we did, guys were starting to get in shape because they realized this was that. We taught them real nutrition. We showed them if you have option A and option B, right? A bag of Fritos versus a bag of Doritos. Fritos, like just like the plain ones, only have 4 ingredients. So if you're going between the two versus Doritos, it had like 52 ingredients, right? So that's like a simple little thing that they can take away and really breaking it down. But going back to the dynamometer, we tested, and this guy, he was a journeyman. And so they were on crazy schedules, 24/7. They're like firefighter type schedule where 24/7 for X many days, and then they go back. We learned their circadian rhythms are super jacked up, which everything gets out of whack at that point. And so there's this one gentleman, I'm not Yeah, I definitely can't say his name.
Don't HIPAA violate yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Like HIPAA violation.
So this, we'll call him Joe. And so we test Joe the first time. You know, both of his grip strengths, they're already below average of what his age range should be accomplishing. And age range have different ranges of like what's good for you. And so the first time, let's say he pulled 100 and he pulled 90. We're like, okay, you know, hopefully these exercises we give you, changing, you know, the way that you live your life is going to slowly increase that. He's like, yeah, whatever. We come back again 3 months later, 6 months later, we test again, and he's got like 100. And then on his left side, he pulled like a 50. And we just, again, brought the research. We're like, here, this is what this means. In the case you are going to see your doctor soon, just like let him know, bring this to attention. He's like, great, I'm actually going to go see my doctor for whatever medication re-up this week. He gives us a call and he told his doctor about the study, and the doctor was like, interesting, we should check it out. They hook him up on an EKG. And his doctor goes, hey, Joe, have you ever had a heart attack? And he goes, no. And he was like, well, based off these readings, you have. And it was within that time that we hadn't seen him. These guys, these blue collar guys, to your point, they're always exhausted. They're always tired. They think that's just how it should be because you've been doing that for 20, 30, 40 years. But after he got that done, he literally went into emergency heart surgery the next day after he was at his doctor's, got a stent put in, had 2 weeks off of work, came back, and the dude is like 65. He was all slow and lethargic, but now he came back and he was like just
new man,
so much energy. And that was, you know, one of the biggest advocates that were there for us at that point. And all these guys,
it comes from within, it's such a huge change.
And we had already a lot of really cool stories that were panning out prior to, but that one was the really one that like, you know, hit the nail on the head, and really just the buy-in that we got from VP of Edison all the way down. You know, it was huge.
Did you test his grip strength again after?
Over time, yeah, and he was a lot better. He was like a lot healthier in the range he should have been for his age. Yeah.
I'm now like nervous about my grip strength.
I know. I was just thinking, hey, anybody got a dynamometer I can borrow?
So, I mean, you can literally get one on Amazon and stuff too. What I would say, it's maybe the numbers aren't as important as consistency, the balance. Yeah. And that's the crazy part. You know, we were talking about the holistic thing of, you know, people in the Knees human phys thing. It's your body is so interconnected truly that something here could be something that's happening down there. And it's wild to think about, but it really does connect in such different ways.
I totally understand that because I was having trouble with my lower back a lot.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what the issue was. And I realized I was deadlifting a lot, and I always blamed the deadlift. I was like, it's the deadlift. Like, gosh, I can't even deadlift because then my lower back hurts and I'm damaged and all this stuff. It was never my lower back. It was the fact that I wasn't stretching my hamstrings and mobilizing my hips enough.
Yep.
And so I loosened up my hips and hammies, and deadlift is great. It doesn't bother me at all anymore.
So something about that, it's like another human body thing. A lot of PTs and stuff will look at, there's always an antagonist, protagonist, right? So if it's usually if the back's hurting, one of the first places you might want to look is on the front side of it, or whatever surrounding it there. And then as you get deep in, I get deep with life with a lot of different things, but then I'm like, whenever I have a problem, I try to like figure out from the exact opposite side of it first, and then kind of attack it from there and be like, okay, did that help it or make it worse? You know? So
with the kinesiology stuff in particular, and I guess attacking problems like that, have you been able to identify some problems? You know, I guess from a physical perspective, have you been able to identify problems that maybe you otherwise, you know, wouldn't have, or in life, right? How is that translated? Are there any solid examples where you?
Yeah, I guess over time, just taking care of the knee with like never actually having gotten it checked out, I feel great, so to speak. But recently, and now it's hard to say.
Now it's your other knee.
I just recently got something in the other knee for the first time ever. And like my left leg, nothing has ever been an issue for my entire 30 years of existence. And now there is something, and I'm like, shit, you know? So now I'm really digging into that too. That's a fresh one. So we'll figure out as time goes. But I'd say, yeah, a lot of times it's just if something does come up, like I know that I have some ankle issues, right? And so I try to do activations, work on that, do a lot of PT with it, and that'll help me feel a lot better when I actually go and do run.
I want to pivot here.
Let's do it.
This is going to go back to like some career stuff because I feel like there's like a gap where it's like I know where you are now and I'm still trying to figure out how you got there.
Yeah.
So where, after you worked for like this company, how did you end up in real estate?
So COVID, my girlfriend graduated from Chapman. Go Panthers. Bringing it back. So we had planned, when I was at this company, I was already planning my exit. I won't get into any politics or anything like that, but I was just ready for the next chapter. And so I had planned and saved up for a trip, and we had a plan to travel Asia for a year. We got 6 months in. We did, Bali, Taiwan, Singapore, Australia, like a bunch of really cool places. And what the coming to moment I had was realizing I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to work for myself. And so we were in the middle of the Philippines when I got the phone call from my mom, and she's like, "You got to come home." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "COVID's happening, don't you know?" We're like, "No, we've been living under a rock. Like, we're surfing our face off every day, eating fresh fruit and riding mopeds around."
Sick.
Yeah.
The dream.
It was amazing. I mean, we blew through some money, but that's why you keep working hard.
It.
Yeah. And so when I came back, I was either going to be getting into medical device sales, which is more relevant to what my degree is, and you're in operating rooms, things like that, which would be really cool. But then real estate had always been something I'd been interested to. And it was like a sink or swim situation. I said, I'm either going all in or I'm not. And so once I decided I was doing it, I'm like, this is it. And it's been a really cool process. It's been a really big hustle, and it's not easy. A lot of people think that it is Selling Sunset or whatever those shows. I've never watched any of the real estate shows on Netflix and stuff. I've seen clips maybe here or there, but the reality is you have to put yourself out there. You have to be personable. You have to be knowledgeable and execute.
I always think about as like people who are in real estate where it's less about selling the house and more about selling like you.
Sure.
You're like, hey, I'm a trustworthy, kind, accessible person. Like, let's do this. And it goes back to the same thing that you were talking about where it's like, I think that being a real estate person means that like, it's all about that human connection too, where it's like you're selling houses or whatever, but like,
sure,
it's about setting people up.
Yeah. And what's been such a learning process too. And through it also, we came back from this trip, landed, it was COVID. I got into real estate, and then that's also where I started getting into like modeling things too. But for real estate, what I ended up realizing is I had to get over my own ego of, oh, that's my friend. Like, oh, they'll definitely use me. No, they won't. Yeah. Nobody owes you anything. And such is life. And so it's not just selling yourself, but it's showing your values that you have, the value that you bring to the table as well. Because I've had family members, I've had friends who use other agents, and it's like a stab in the heart. But then you come back and you realize it's like nobody owes you anything. You have to show up. You have to go at bat for yourself. And if that happens, you just have to like pick yourself up and move on. You can't really dwell on it. So it's been a really huge learning experience. And it's interesting navigating with friendships, people, and everybody feels kind of awkward talking to you about it sometimes, unless they are using you. So I've had the whole spectrum of like who clients are. I've helped people at Run Club buy houses.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner, and I've even experienced that where I'm like,
yeah,
there is a thing where it's like obviously you see the value in yourself. Right. And so anytime someone like is like, oh, I'm going to go somewhere else, you're like, oh, but like I have all of this value in myself.
Right.
And maybe you do to them and maybe you don't. Do you feel like all of these pieces fit together? Like I always kind of like get to a point when we're talking to people where we're like, there's all of these pieces of like, being a first gen, like going to college, like, the kinesiology, the Run Club, the real estate. And like, I always try to think about like, what is like the midpoint, like what's the center?
Where's the common ground?
Yeah. Where Where do you feel like all of those things meet?
I think exactly where I'm at. I was telling a buddy of mine, my Sherpa, my endurance Sherpa, I was telling him that I was coming and doing this today. And I was like, in life, I think we all kind of have imposter syndrome in different ways. And so part of it, even here, was like, well, what is it about me that is different or special? And he was just reminding me that a lot of the different things that I bring to the table are a culmination of these things. Because I was on survival mode for so much of my childhood, I'm really good at code switching and adapting to different environments and people. But also when I worked with all the blue collar guys, I was 22 years old coming into a room filled with 40 to 50 guys who are well older than me, have been working super hard. And I had to break the ice in such a way of like saying, this is not my ego speaking. This is just the fact. And I'm here to help you. And then once you get the buy-in and people realize that you're there doing things like because you want to be, I think that was like a really big piece of it all too.
Genuinity.
Yeah, being yourself. And so with real estate, I mean, even with Run Club, again, I purposely don't put myself on there because I don't want people to get the wrong impression that I'm there and being extra friendly or whatever. That's just who I am. And over time, if they find out that I'm in real estate and they want to use me, then sweet, Sometimes my girlfriend and people tell me to push it a little bit more, but that feels disgenuine to me.
You don't want the vanity plug in some way. Yeah.
No. So that's why I really do I separate it. But when it does work out, it's like a really cool thing because I know that if I'm going to bat for you and you're like one of my people, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of, whatever that means. Real estate aside, like I just, the people I care about, I really, really care about.
You're looking to enrich people's lives overall, right?
Absolutely.
And it seems like that's the common theme throughout, starting the Run Club, just bringing people to a healthy future.
Yeah.
Also trying to put them in their future home.
Sure.
All of these different things. Do you feel like your competitive spirit and or personality or personability has made you more successful in the real estate realm?
I think, yeah, it's definitely with real estate. It always reminds me, it's like, okay, this isn't a 5K, right? Like I can use the stupid analogies or whatever. It's like, no, this is a marathon, truly. This isn't going to happen right now. You have to put in all this work and then show up for race day having executed everything. You can go couch to marathon or, off the couch, whatever, but you're not going to perform as well as if you put in time and like we're really diligent with it. And being in real estate, I mean, like I am my own brand and business. And so it's very much so the same thing where I'm competing against so many people. There are more agents than there are houses for sale in San Diego. And it's such a crazy thought. But at the same time, I'm like, I know I'm putting in the work. I know that I'm leading with myself and like my authentic self. And I'm going to help the people and work with the people who want to work with me too. And that has been like a really cool thing. And in North County, it's really fun, but it's also something where I have to think about now. But when I'm out and about because of Run Club, because of whatever else, if you're walking around, like I'm gonna know like at least a handful of people at one time. And so it's like, you have to pick and choose like where you're going when, like if you want to get work done, you can't actually like, go here,
Yeah. Sit at a coffee shop on your computer and end up striking up a conversation with 10 different people. It's like, gosh, I got nothing done.
Exactly. Yeah. But in some cases, again, going back to what Max was saying, is like, that is what I do, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is like, I created that because I get to continue to just be myself and be out there and enrich people's lives in whatever way that is. And maybe they think, oh yeah, he's in real estate too. Like maybe I can check it out and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And
what are some of your future goals? Let's start. What are some of your future life goals first?
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yeah. Not professional, not athletic. What are
married with kids?
Cool.
That's a big one because, I think for my upbringing, especially just being like super disorganized and all over the place, like my girlfriend and I, we've always talked about that. We bonded over that really quick, and thankfully we've pushed the marriage and kids thing off for a little bit, but we've been together for a while. So at least one of those probably happened a little sooner than the other.
Kids will happen next week and then you get married in like 5 or 6 years, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's a big one. I think if we're not talking sports or work, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I've done a lot of therapy for a lot of things that I've gone through, and that was like a huge thing. I did something called EMDR. So
what is that?
I think it's eye movement desensitization, something. But so as a kid, when I was growing up in these like weird time and space. I'll keep it as light as I can. But I was sexually assaulted when I was a kid, and like there was like different bad shit that happened, and so that messed with me all through my life. And so there was like a point in time within the past few years where something really hit, and I was just like, I was so tired of feeling what I was feeling. And so EMDR is a way where it's an actual type of therapy that helps make new connections in the brain, and like the way that I react to either a thought or trigger or trauma response comes out way different. So
how were you reacting before?
So like even just thinking about it before, I would not be able to even say it before without like bawling, crying. And so like now I can actually say it like with a smile on my face and like feel fine because I had gone through and, you know, done the work. This is like the way the therapy works. It's like a left brain, right brain thing. Mm-hmm. And like it can be more and more intense, but you relive whatever that traumatic thing was as vividly as you possibly can. And you basically resequence and recreate what it looked like, because you figure out why whatever happened, how whatever happened, and what you would do differently if you were to go back and do it again. So I literally like reprogrammed in my brain when I think about it. Before it'd be like the thing that happened, but now it's what I want it to be. And especially realizing, you know, as an only child, like single mom type thing, I was just subjected to whatever. Nobody was there to like protect me, you know? And so a lot of my cognitions I had about it was like, I was helpless. I couldn't protect myself, whatever, which is why I think I like being strong. Like nobody's gonna F with me or anybody that's in my circle. Like I will protect the people who are in my circle, like to the death, you know? I'm not a violent person, but if somebody gets me mad or like does something to harm somebody that's like a loved one, I will like, yeah, I'll throw down.
Do what needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I think we all would, but when you have the thing that it connects it, that was like a really big, I was like, oh, that's probably why I do that. That's why even though I'm still running, like I still want to be strong because I want to make sure I can like protect or whatever. Yeah. So
this may be sensitive, but as a man having that experience, what was that like for you to admit that you could walk, like that you might need to work on it in some way, or that you even own that thing happened to you, right?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So as a male individual in society, right, it's something that's probably less heard of.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is so funny because when I share my story or when I share like that happened, and I share the various specifics with certain people.
Of course.
It happens more often than you think.
I think that is the recurring theme that I've heard.
Right. But I mean, it happens a lot to women, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot.
Yeah.
But like my friends' dads, you know, like when I actually, it was funny because real estate is what almost triggered a lot of it. My team, they're doing like they're like, oh, reintroduce yourself on like socials and stuff. Oof. And everyone's like, hey, I'm like a mom. I love cats and shopping and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I tried putting some version of like, oh, I do sports and like whatever. And it just was so inauthentic. Something was so deep inside of me. It was like a visceral feeling. I'm like, dude, you need to let this go. Like you need to come out with like whatever you've been holding within for so long and just like fucking blast it out there. Because so when people see me, usually they see like extroverted, really happy. I'm a model who like what? And like all these other things. My self-image of that, especially at that point in time, was not that. Mm-hmm. Like my self-image was this chubby kid who got taken advantage of, who was helpless, who couldn't protect himself. And to say, oh, I'm in real estate, like let's buy and sell a home. Like it was so opposite of everything that was like feeling inside. So I had posted something on Instagram like a couple years ago now. And once I did, it was crazy the amount of people who had been in my life for some amount of time come out about it, you know? And so that was the point where I thought it was like, oh shit, like other people need this as much as I do too. And one of the more recent things that has helped me a lot, especially when it comes to talk about like being sexually assaulted, and because it wasn't just one time, it was like, you know, unfortunately through childhood. Do you know the podcast Bad Friends?
Yes.
Bobby Lee. Do you know who Bobby Lee is?
Okay. Yeah, I know who he is.
So I just randomly stumbled upon it. I've always loved Bobby Lee. And so he was molested and stuff when he was a kid too by somebody who has special needs. And it was like, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like you never know who's going through what, but they would be so serious. And then they go on these serious tangents. And then, his co-host would like just take jabs at it and just totally bring humor back into it.
Yeah.
It just made it feel so much more human that way than when you have something that's deep like that, you feel so disconnected from everybody else. Like you feel the worth and the value of yourself is so much less. And so when somebody like that you look up to can talk about something like that, it just makes it feel so much more like normal in a sense of like, okay, it's not just me, right? Mm-hmm. Like somebody who is successful and whatever, granted he's super weird and like, I love him for that.
Yeah.
It just made it feel so much better. And I've been able to share a lot more of that with people too. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's representation matters.
Yeah.
Right. I think that a lot of people think that they're having a much more unique experience than they are. And I think seeing people who are like, oh, well, like this person looks like me and they've had a similar experience to me is so validating. Because it means like, oh, like, well, Bobby Lee is this like wildly successful. He's local also. Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But like he's, wildly successful. He's like done all of the things. And it's like, oh, like, but he's had a similar experience as I have.
Yeah.
And he's like allowed it to shape him in ways, but also not allowed it to shape him in ways. I think that just...
Oh, I was just gonna say, something that you touched on that I want to draw attention to here is, and this is a common theme that we've heard and seen from kind of a lot of athletes, and I think it, in some odd way, it translates to success in sport. A lot of people seem to be dealing with past traumas and utilizing sports in some fashion as an outlet. And you mentioned that you feel like you need to be strong sometimes to not feel so helpless, right? I've made the reference that like, oh, for me, cycling sometimes is therapy, and it's not, right? And we're all aware of that. They are different things. Are you able to delineate or draw the differences between those two things? Because you did very intentional work, right? That quite literally rewires your brain.
Yeah.
That is a different thing than lifting weights to deal with the traumas. So can you maybe explain some of the differences that you've seen between the two things? Because one isn't the other. And I feel like that is something that some people, obviously there's differing opinions, but a lot of people won't go do the other, right? And actually do the mental work and go through therapy and all those things. And they'll use sports as their outlet instead.
I think a lot of endurance sports, and I've even seen some social media stuff, it's like a lot of endurance athletes typically have some trauma response or something like that. I think that activity and exercise is therapeutic. I don't think it's therapy. And so doing the work itself is such a different thing. One of my real estate team leads, she is like very woo-woo and things. And I can get that way too. I think I have more like the masculine side of it, and there's like a certain level I'll get to, but I know what like doing the work looks like, and it's still doing it, right? Like I'm not where I want to be. Like I still have a lot of things I need to work through, but I've gotten over the hump of like what really was holding me back before. Whereas when if I feel like shit and I go for a run, I'm probably going to feel a little bit better after. When I go for a ride, like trail running, I think one of the things that drew me to trail running so much, that to me, maybe gravel riding too, I don't do that, but like that's like the ultimate form of presence. You can't be thinking about other things when there's rocks and nooks and crannies and turns and snakes and coyotes and mountain lions that are out and about. Like you have to be right there and you can't think about things. And so that euphoric feeling, the runner's high, whatever, trail running, you can get runner's high like almost instantaneously because you're so just focused on what's right there. And so I use it a lot as like a therapeutic thing, and it helps a lot, especially now when I feel stressed, whatever. If I go lift heavy, it like that feels great. Like my body is tired, whatever the stress was, like it was almost like instead of a punching bag, like I'm lifting weights instead, So I think that's the differentiation for me. I know that there's times where maybe I'm not making the right time to do actual therapy work and things like that maybe I need to. So, yeah.
I appreciate you drawing the difference between things. I just know that that's been like a common theme. And some people will just be like, this is my therapy. It's like, well, there is a difference there. And I even said it myself a few times. I've been reminded pretty sternly, like, they're not the same thing. I'm like, you're right.
To each their own too, right? Like everybody takes things differently. They experience different things. Like, I don't know what people feel. Maybe some people can really deal with their thoughts really well and have cohesive new outlooks on things when they're done with a bike ride. I know that's not me. I know I feel good, but once I'm done riding and if I haven't taken care of whatever, I'm still going to feel, like not great about whatever.
Now that you've been able to sort of get some of these things off your chest and let them go, how do you feel like that's enriched your own life and maybe your career and other things?
I think I stopped being a victim. I think that's a pretty common theme with a lot of people where they feel like everything is happening to them. I have other things that happened through my upbringing that are also just as shitty. And a lot of it was like, woe is me. But end of the day, the thing that changed too was it's up. Nobody's going to do it for me. And once I first did that thing and either posted or had the thought or whatever, and then did EMDR, I'm like, it really is about how you show up for yourself, which is why exercise is so important to me, because that helps put me in the right mind and headspace to then also make sure I'm taking care of myself and other people. Because, it's like when an athlete gets injured, they get down such like a bad rabbit hole and mental health goes down too and all these things. And so it's just like a really good reminder for me on the daily, like, do something for yourself. It is selfish to some extent, but you have to do that. Take care of yourself and then you'll be able to take care of others too.
Why do you think people don't do that? What do you think is holding folks back from doing something for themselves in the first place? There's a lot of people that default to not getting out and being active, right? That's not their default mode. They are struggling with something or trying to overcome something and they go the other direction.
I think that's people who are disguising like what actually needs to be done. Like you have the other example would be like a workaholic, right? There's some people who they work all day and night, but they're not actually dealing with the thing. I think the classic example is like the curmudgeon, like the old grumpy dude who worked at the same company for 50 years and has always been super unhappy, like, get off my lawn. Like there's something else that's there, know, and they're not actually taking care of that, but instead they fill their time with working and not doing mental work, but doing, work.
Busy work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a cultural thing too. I think in Western societies versus people who are in Asia and South America and things like that, you hear it all the time where people who are in less affluent places are actually a lot happier. I know we felt that when we were in Asia, where we had reverse culture shock when we came back, and it was such a big change to get back into it. And so now, like running a business and all these things, I thought that I'd going to be choosing a job where I wouldn't be so stuck in a place, but I chose the most location-based work ever.
You're working
everybody's
for yourself.
remote, traveling the world doing things. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So
how do you feel like you find balance then? So you came back with somewhat of it sounds like a different outlook on, Western society and how we work and everything else. Are you able to find some balance then and how much work you put in? Because at the end of the day, we do have goals and things that we want to achieve, right?
Yep.
So it's tough to balance. How do you do that?
By doing all the things. I don't golf, but I get a ride, right? So business, right? Business happens on the golf course, or business deals are made in the hallway, things like that. Well, I go and I ride and I talk with people and I'm just myself, and people know I'm in real estate, so they'll ask questions. I get to do what I love while I'm doing my work and also taking care of my mental, And so there was even an adjustment, even with having to share with my girlfriend, like that's what work sometimes looks like for me. Because when I'm just out and about with people, that's how you can you build rapport, you build a relationship. And I would rather have quality relationships over quantity of relationships. And that is something that sometimes I struggle with, because at Run Club, I try to make sure everybody is taken care of. But there's only one me and there's 100 them. But I do what I can, and I try to be as present as I can when I am with someone.
I feel like this is something that I've seen before about people who you have to take care of yourself before you can show up for other people.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Which is I think that is something that I've definitely like struggled with, where a lot of times like I find myself spread thin over a lot of people, and a lot of that falls through when I haven't taken care of myself. And I feel like one of the through lines that I've heard from you is just like, you gotta, before you can show up for other people, you gotta show up for yourself.
Granted, there are times like when there's deadlines or something that really comes up, right? Like this morning I have an offer that's out. Like I need to make sure my clients are good, but I'm going to go like later. I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to go do something, and just make sure that I do allocate that time for it, because then it's really easy to get super busy to the point where you just realize like, oh crap, there's the entire day. I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. And now you just kind of feel like bummed about it too.
Let's talk about your career as a male model.
As a male model.
Yeah. When
that was hilarious.
when I got,
Honestly, I just want to know your hair care routine, man.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I woke up like this.
Yeah?
No, there's like a little schmutz in there, a little something.
All right.
But yeah, no.
Not going to give away the secret sauce though.
Yeah.
when we got past, when I talked to Adam and I was like, hey, like who are people that like, give me 3 people who like you really want to like see on an
That's
episode.
cool.
And you were like either 1 or 2.
That's awesome.
But he pitched you as athlete, run club organizer, tall, dark, and handsome, male model. That was the 4. So
hilarious.
is there some male modeling in there?
There's some male modeling in there.
Nice.
And that's like, it's such a thing, I think. Yeah, okay, I'll circle back in a second. But with that, I had a buddy that I met through bikes. He has his own fashion label that is very popular now. He does like one-off pieces where he takes like textiles from the 1700s, whatever, and like makes really cool jackets out of them. He went like TikTok famous, now he's Instagram famous, but he asked me to model for him when he was first getting started. I had some dope pictures, and my girlfriend was like, she's been telling me, you need a model. And I was like, why? My friend asked me, I got some cool pictures, sent it to an agency, and like they signed me the next week. And my first year, I booked massive companies that I never thought I would ever do. I did Lululemon a couple times. I did
cool.
Nike. I've done Dick's Sporting Goods a handful of times. I have a campaign with Chase Banks and Marriott coming out soon. Just like a bunch of random things. I'm like, this is what happens when you put yourself out there.
You downplayed this so much.
Yeah,
dude.
you're like, I'm not really a male model.
I don't really do, it just kind of happened. Yeah.
Well, it really did. And a lot of it, it's reinforced it so much where, again, like the imposter syndrome creeps up, because I don't identify as that thing, right? Like I just do, like I do things. And that has been reinforced so much where with real estate, with Run Club, with training, with modeling, you just got to show up. You just got to do it. Put yourself out there. Know that you did the work, and like whatever comes back will come back too.
Opportunities present themselves when you're available for the opportunity.
Yeah,
when it's the right time, right?
It's the quote of luck is like when opportunity meets preparedness too, right? Like I guess I was
lucky.
I was like, I guess. In some ways, I am racially, ethnically ambiguous. So like that is in right now. I have that going for me. And if someone's going to make money for it, it's like, it might as well be me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. I'm racially, ethically ambiguous.
Yeah.
You would never know where I'm from.
Exactly.
Are your modeling contracts running in?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we were in the same campaign, the Chase campaign.
Just saying next to each other.
No, dude, not even close.
I've gotten so validated for the hair, like Sephora, like I've done some other things.
That's cool.
You know that show Queer Eye?
Yeah.
There's a guy, John Van Ness, with like the Jesus looking dude. Like it was for his hair care product and whatever. And they like started following me, and they're like, oh, we love it, whatever. I'm like, wow.
That's so
this
cool,
is so
man.
weird. And this is so cool, I guess.
You got to connect with like the Troy Polamalu, or what did he do? Head and Shoulders or whatever. That's a good one.
My girlfriend also has like crazy curly hair, but she's short. But we both dressed up as Troy Polamalu for Halloween one year.
So good. Dude.
I got us tank tops, printed just a big old picture of Troy in his face, like did the eye black and had, it was so funny.
Dude, that's so good.
So modeling has absolutely helped me through the whole real estate process, because dude, it's a grind and it takes time. Like my first year in real estate, I made more modeling than I did in real estate.
Oh, wow.
Second year, it was probably equal. I'm now in my 3.5 year, and I'd say, I mean, real estate, I've made more for sure. But modeling was definitely like, that helped a lot over time because it just takes time to get into the industry.
I'm such a real estate nerd, so I want to talk about it a little bit. Are you investing? Are you acquiring property on your own?
I'm planning to, yeah.
Okay.
So this year, that's the goal of this year is to buy my first investment property.
Where are you going to buy?
Oh, so now you want the market insight.
Yeah, man. Hey, I personally, I own property in like Central California,
Very cool.
and I am looking at places like Oklahoma City.
Nice.
Like my friend's a realtor out there, and some other places that are more, I guess, rental friendly, things like that. Also, the barrier to entry in San Diego is very high.
Extremely.
Right. So, I'm always curious, like, what other people are thinking, especially those folks that are in the market.
So my market that I've lightly identified isn't necessarily for everybody. It's also a selfish endeavor because I want to go there. So it's probably going to be like somewhere like Kona.
Cool.
Just because, so I'm looking at niche things too. It's not Oahu, which is extremely expensive. It's a lot more low key, but if you can find something in such an area, and then also if you can cater it to like triathletes, right? And
Go train there.
Different people, yeah, go train there. There still is surf. I have a buddy who's a realtor out there too, and it's like I see what he's showing, and I've run some numbers, and some of it makes sense. And I also want to go stay there. And so if it can be kind of multidimensional, that is what my first investment property would look like to be successful. Just make sure the mortgage is covered, maybe a little bit of cash flow, but it's just to get it started.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so do you see yourself having a pretty considerable portfolio at some point that allows you, would you want to continue supporting yourself through the actual boots on the ground sales of things, or is this a different type of endeavor for you?
It's long game. So I definitely, the things with real estate I want to do, definitely build a portfolio, have my own team. I'll start my own team eventually too. So like I said, I've only been in it 3.5 years or so. Most of my business has actually been my own people, which has been really cool. But it's taken time, to build the trust and the validation through different success of sales and things like that. I'm half Chinese. I actually have a handful of Chinese clients right now too. And that's like an untapped low-hanging fruit market for me where I can bridge the gap between American culture and Chinese culture. And so, I'm brushing up, taking Chinese lessons with tutors online and just doing what I can to set myself apart. Like that's another value prop where, hey, I can bridge this gap because a lot of people don't understand Chinese culture and how like traditional and hardcore they can be sometimes. And so this can be a way where a lot of money comes from the East too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think even just like speaking Chinese is a huge.
I love surprising people. It's the best.
Is Mandarin more popular language than English?
Yeah, it's
the number one or two most spoken.
It's number one, but that's also, it's kind of a gimmick because China's just
population
the biggest. Yeah,
density,
exactly. It's population based. Yeah. And then Spanish being second, English third.
Okay.
Which really? Spanish would be amazing to have. Yeah, because you have Latin America, you have South America.
Central America.
Or not Latin America, sorry, Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
I
always just, since English is like everyone's second language.
Yeah.
Where I always assumed it would be number two.
Yeah.
I think again, based off population, because Spanish, you're covering several continents. You know? I mean, English too, like in the Philippines, the Philippines is made of like 7,000 islands. You could be in the middle of nowhere on some random island and they speak English because it's the second national language.
So that is wild.
Pretty cool.
Isn't there some Spanish spoken in the Philippines also?
Potentially. There's a lot of different dialects, and because, the Spanish did their thing.
We're everywhere.
Everywhere.
The Spanish got out there. There is a lot of influence, like ¿Cómo estás? In Tagalog, which is the most spoken Filipino language, it's ¿Cómo está acá?
Yeah, which is definitely
pretty close.
Yeah,
There's some crossover there.
There's some crossover.
What are your, go ahead.
Do you have any plans to get back to Asia?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I think once work kind of continues on a little bit more, I want to do, 2-3 week trips at a time. But yeah, I don't know if I want to get into international real estate too. And so I'm starting to try to look out there and see who's doing that. And I can pick their brains a little bit more because I would love to travel a bit more for work too.
What's your goal with the run club side of things and the community aspect of things? You want to keep growing that, or is it kind of like you want it to just be natural and people can approach it in whatever capacity they want to? What are your goals with it?
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like we're at like where I'm good with it. If more happens, again, so like I guess natural grassroots, see what goes on. But if a brand wanted to like come and like actually truly sponsor it or something, like that'd be great. If we can have some income and do different things in different ways, and I also want to have more of a social cause too. Right now, currently, it's truly just like a social club and athletic, where like PB Run Club, I heard that they stop every quarter mile. Average pace is like 11-minute mile, you know, whatever. Like we actually run. Like I'm there. I'm still there to get my work in. You know,
not the beer league type of thing. Yeah.
But people get that stuff afterwards. They still do their thing. But yeah, I think we're at a pretty good place right now. If more were to happen, then I'm super open to it.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of the Breakfast Club Texas?
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So a couple guys were kind of doing something in the cycling space that was really similar. It sounds like it was a similar situation to what you're doing with the run club. Yeah. And it had just grown and grown and grown. And this is in Austin, Texas. And the cycling community there, it got so massive. They have like 600 to 1,000 people on a ride, a group ride. They have like 6 different groups. The cops escort them through town to get them from one side of Austin to the other.
Crazy.
And it's a rolling closure at this point. So it's gotten so massive, and they do so much for the community there and cycling and everything else. And it's wild to see the level of support that they've gotten. So obviously the shop has Paul Normal is their primary kit situation. Then I'm the San Diego Paul Normal ambassador.
Okay.
And they've come in and offered a lot of sponsorship, you know, that really helped grow. Well, not necessarily grow, but they really have helped, like, you know, harness what Breakfast Club is and expand it as much as they can. And dude, it's just so cool to see what something like that has done for the community. So it always intrigues me when somebody starts something like that and you see it kind of bubbling and there's some growth there and things. It's like, it's funny to see how big something can get.
Yeah.
So it always makes me curious, like, especially hearing it now. I want this to be like a stamp in time where you said, my goals are this with it.
Yeah.
And it's good enough as is. And then I'm really curious to see, you know, in a year or two's time, how it develops.
So it's funny. There's a lot of people at Viore who run with us, both corporate and retail. Yeah. They're also an Encinitas brand. I'm like, come on, dude.
The
Like, it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Like, their logo is literally like run, surf, train, hike. I'm like, that is what I do. Like,
that's me as a person.
Yeah. Not that that's the goal or anything, but the alignment is there. So it's just with some of our people that are in there, I'm like, I'm just so surprised there's not an official thing.
Yeah, like make the connect, man.
We definitely we do like runs from the store where they'll close the store for us, and we've had as many as 250 people at a run.
Okay.
Which, if you've been to Encinitas, is like, it's a strip. Like, that's all it is.
It's the whole thing.
So it was like, it takes over the street, which was really cool too. But yeah, I mean, I'm super open. I think that there's a lot of brands that reach out, and so there's like a weird gatekeeping piece that I have to do now, which I don't necessarily enjoy.
You want it to stay true to its identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it sounds like, obviously, these things coming from a brand and their identity and mission has to align with what yours is for the Run Club.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do tend to give more priority to like local things. Like it's really cool. Like, I love partnering with studios, restaurants, like whatever that's close by, because it really is about the community. North County, I mean, I know a lot of people really like it. You guys are down here, so maybe you feel different, which is all good. It's been the first place like I've ever really felt like was home, because even though I grew up in Irvine, like we moved around a handful of times, even within Irvine, you know, poorly executed marriages, like different things like that with my mom. Like we bopped around a lot. And, so when I think of like what home is usually it's more of a feeling than a place for me, but like what I feel up there like feels really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just want to continue boosting it as much as I can too. And yeah, just being me, man. Like, if I can help them and people like me, then maybe something can work out in the future to also help me out and help them out. Like, but if it doesn't, I'm good.
Yeah. It's cool to like run clubs don't require like a huge amount of infrastructure to like make them work well and be successful.
Yeah.
So I think it is also always, you're in this kind of good place where it's like, well, if someone wants to come in, there has to be something that they can provide that's like a real value add.
Absolutely.
Which allows you to be picky and selective. You can't just like, you don't have to take the first thing that comes because you have something that runs just fine on its own. Yeah. You know?
And shout out to all of my other like Run Club leaders, because over time, like we've scaled and like really intentionally I've like chosen and asked the people who are leaders now to be leaders because I know they care about the community. I know they're not there for the clout. You know, like there's good community people that want good for everybody else too. Mm-hmm. And that's always been like such a cool thing. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot of brands who like, or even services and companies are like, hey, like we want to come out and do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like what can you offer to the group? And they're like, oh, we can give you like this little discount or whatever. And I'm like, that's not the point. Like if you want exposure, like we want you to hook us up too, because North County, there's like a lot of affluent people. It's so badass in the Run Club. It's like, there's attorneys, there's every walk of life doing different things that you wouldn't even think of. There's a girl who studies mosquitoes. I'm like, what the hell? And it's just like the most random things, but it's a really cool group of people that when they get together and running is a common denominator, like everybody's just on the even playing field. Right. And yeah.
Sports are such a unique thing for that because I feel like it happens in the cycling space as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes now with kind of the little bit of like Instagram, following that I do have, I can put out questions that are very like, do I know about anybody in graphic design? I get like 16 messages. Apparently everybody's a graphic designer. I'm like, well, there you go. So it's really nice to be able to connect through, with people through a particular sport. Right. And I feel like it does allow you to build such cool connections. You said you've seen some of the trickle down in real estate and you've sold some people homes and things. So.
Yeah. Which was like such a cool thing to happen. What's your guys' goal with doing all these pods and everything too?
Oh man,
we're getting asked questions.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think our goal with this is just turning people who are, I think, often put on pedestals into real people. I think that a lot of our, like the people who like know us and follow us are on the more casual end of like endurance athletics. And so they see people like Dante or, Laurel or pro cyclists or, and
I mean, Alexi, right?
Alexi, where to them, like he doesn't exist as a human who is like doing things. He's like, he's like a gravel pro.
Right.
He's and like the idea that like, well, like first and foremost, like he's a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that for me, the goal of the podcast has always been just humanization of incredible people. I think that there was for a long time in media, there was a trend towards sensationalization of people where it's like, this ultra rarefied. And I think that what we're trying to do is the exact opposite, where we're trying to make it apparent that, no matter how amazing things seem is that like, not to be like, yeah, man, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else, where my goal has always been to also show people that like there is always other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Also, I think that there's a trend on Instagram or like social media or TikTok or whatever, where it's such a highlight reel, where it's like, oh, here's a video of me posting up on people. Here's a video of me nailing this workout. And it's like, getting to see what the rest of someone's life looks like means that you actually get a better understanding that like, well, my whole life isn't like that.
Yeah.
My whole life isn't a highlight reel. My whole life is incredibly normal.
Yeah.
And it's just that has always been the goal for me. I don't know what his goal is.
It's cool. No, I like that.
I think on my end, it's a lot of the storytelling aspect of it. I think that something I've noticed about myself is I've always been like aggressively like sports and athletic driven. And I've found that in my personal life, a lot of the way that I am in general, a lot of that stems from sort of the competitive nature side of things and the way that I was brought up and kind of all the different things that have contributed to, from my upbringing and the way that I do things made me realize that a lot of other folks probably have similar connections and stories and things like that. And so I think it's so interesting to learn about different individuals and their paths. And I think that provides common ground for a lot of people that might want to listen. And I think that it's really important and cool to see so many different types of people doing so many different things and hearing how they got there. I also really like the psychology behind those things. what is it that is going on in somebody's brain that has allowed them to be successful in a sport. There's a lot of things like that make it really interesting to me. And also it's been like such a good opportunity to just meet people that are influential in their communities and like doing cool things. And I want to also have a platform that eventually is large enough to take people that might not be the biggest name in the world and give them a platform to tell their story and allude to the things that they are doing in the community and get more people involved in that, find some way to, you know, back those things up. It's just I want recognition to happen. And, you know, at this point in time, obviously we're not massive or anything like that, but we're growing a small following. And I think that in the long run, if we just keep telling authentic stories, it'll continue to go that direction. And I'm at the point now where even like if this were to be monetized and we were to bring money in and have our own sponsorships and things, I would probably, my number one priority in that would be to utilize any of that funding and like the growth to just expand our audience and our guests, you know, be able to bring in more individuals from other side of the country, like fly somebody out, sit them down here. We want to keep filming in person. We think that's extremely important to maintain sort of that integrity of what we're doing, which brings about its own challenges. But, you know, it might mean like, hey, we don't have an episode this week, but it's the reality of it is like we're asking somebody to come to San Diego or us go to them if they're in Vegas or, you know, Yosemite, wherever. It's tougher, but yeah, I just want to keep telling authentic stories. And I think that we're on a good path to do so.
That's cool. Yeah. I feel like, a lot of times, I think one of the things that you were saying too, which also goes with storytelling, is a lot of people are kind of stuck in that highlight reel type of life thing. And I see it, and there's like that disconnect. And sometimes I'm not nearly as active as I should be with all these things that I have going on. And there's like pressure from other things, but at the end of the day, it's nice just operating within my own space of what I can do. And I think it's cool to just listen to different stories, have the platform so people can see and share things too. So,
yeah, I think that just the thing that is so special about people is that there is kind of nothing special. And it's like everyone like fundamentally is a regular person. And what is interesting to me is like, well, they've made a long string of decisions that has like ended up somewhere that is maybe not normal. And I think that for me, you know, there's nothing about like intrinsic to you that like you were born with that was like, oh, this is like this is why you became a community organizer. It's like you made a long string of decisions. And I think that what I like to see is that people are like, they see the end product and they assume that that's just where you started. Right. As opposed to being able to see the pathway along. I think that, and then it's like the TikTokifying of things where.
Let's go long form, baby.
Long form, you know, where you've been filming for, I can't even tell.
Yeah.
Forever.
You know, trying to extend attention spans.
Yeah.
I think that when you try and condense things, you lose a lot of nuance and the importance of that story.
The meat.
and that was like such a big reason why I even ended up sharing my story on socials for some time, because I was saying I was going to circle back at one point. So Bryant, my cousin, the really influential one, he OD'd. And so even to this day, he's a vegetable. And so a lot of the things that like give me vigor of life is also just making sure that I'm living a life of purpose and like with intent. Because this kid, even though as rambunctious and troublesome as he was, like he was a good person at heart, but he just didn't have the environment and the guidance to get where he needed. Mm-hmm. And so like my first try I did, my own thing, I was like, what was it? It was like, for those who can't or something, is like what I said to myself, and found out that there's a charity called For Those Who Can't. But when I crossed the finish line, like I never thought I'd do a try. And it was the visceral thing where I just started crying. And I thought to myself, well, I'm living not just for myself, but also for my cousin who can't anymore. And people always saw just from the outside Brian, one time in college, like one of the most heart-to-heart talks that we ever had, which weren't very many, he was caught up into like pretty heavy gang activity and things. And this was all still out in Eastvale. He's probably 20 or 22 at this time. And he like, it was so weird. He guilted me, and he guilted me in the sense that, cause I was in college and like, I was like partying and this and that. And like, that's all he saw, but he never like really knew some other things that had happened as well. And it kind of just like, I tried being there for him. I tried helping talk him off the cliff, you know, and make sure that he knows that he still has a light at the end of the tunnel. And it was just like such a hard thing to see. And when I got the phone call that he OD'd, it was one of those shock moments of like, I'm not surprised, but I'm so devastated at the same time. Because I lived with him for cumulative, probably 5 or 6 years of my life. Just how much time I spent with him.
That's like 25% of your life at 20 years old.
Exactly.
That's a lot.
And nobody knows the relationship that Bryant and I had other than us two. And, you know, at this point he's nonverbal. It was just like a hard thing. And I said bye to him before we went on this Asia trip and things like that. And he's still kicking in current Bryant fashion. Like he just won't give up the fight. Like he's going to keep fighting forever. So it was, there was a lot of that. And I just wanted people to know that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, that we all have to find whatever it is within ourselves that either gives you life and vitality and inspires you to want to live. And if one person can inspire you and like bring happiness or whatever it is, like that's such a win. And to keep people like that around. But with social media, I feel like it loses sight of that. And mine is, it's still a highlight if you're just looking at the feed, but a lot of times on the story, I do try to post things that are real, and I can get existential and deep quite often. And sometimes I do like the double take of like, should I post this or should I not? But at the end of the day, whenever I do, like my girlfriend, she gives me grief of like, that was like so deep and like whatever, because she's very not, like I'm the sensitive one in the relationship. Like I'm the one who has all the feels, and she's so practical and like matter of fact that it's hilarious. Yeah. So she's like, oh, nice post. And I'm like, hey, I was like thinking about that. People reached out and they liked the message. So end of the day, it's a lot less of caring what other people think about it. I know that those types of things that I think about in here and share out there, especially on stories, if it is more real, then people resonate with it. You know, you have the 16 people that, like they actually do exactly what you're asking for. Well, when you put something out there, it's like, people resonate with these stories because that's what, you know, actual stories, not Instagram stories, but like they resonate with the message behind it. And that's what really matters.
Dude. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, quite the turn in Brian's story. It sounds like, man, that's rough. But, that's tough to also not being expecting it. And then something like that happens. Right. And so, do you feel like that's impacted you in some type of way aside from, you know, it sounds like it's impacted your want for kind of continuing and developing community and pushing forward and living, you know, the best version of your life that you can. You know, is there any
that helped snap me out of it, out of like that victim mentality a little bit too. Crap, I'm just realizing I'm saying too much now.
I'll cut every single one.
Yeah, right.
That's a joke.
For that, it made me just remember that every day you wake up, you have the opportunity to do what you want to do with life. And just like anybody else, I am human. I do fall in times where it's like a lot tougher. Sometimes it's easier. But on the days that are good, I'm out there doing the best work that I possibly can and trying to show up for everything. And then on days where I can't, you know, there's only so much you can do, and I have to take a step back, reevaluate, and then kind of go from there.
All important to remember. I think that's probably a great time to, well, first, plug whatever you know, throw your real estate situation out there. Where can people find you if they want to buy a house in San Diego?
Well, my normal Instagram is just Sun Greene, SUNGREENE.
And I'll link all this in the description too.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's there. You can find it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your real estate Instagram?
It's talk about niche. I know that you guys are pretty niche too. It's Selling Encinitas.
All right.
Ooh. Yeah.
Is there anything else that, like, any thank yous you want to give? Things you want to plug? Any brands that you want to stare directly into the camera and be like,
Sponsor me.
No, I love you, Mom. Thanks for everything you've done for me. I'm really proud of you. You're now retired and going to do some really crazy adventures. Friends, family, my partner, my girlfriend. Thanks for hanging in there with me.
All right. I think that does it for us. Thanks for sitting down with us today.
Thanks.
I'm sure we'll see you soon and
see you
around
soon.
North
On
County.
bikes.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You got to come to some rides.
Yeah, I got to do it.
All right. Cool.
Thanks.
Here's the clap.